The moment you disconnect, watch how the narcissist falls apart when every tactic fails. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're not just talking about narcissism, we're stepping into its most haunting dimension. That eerie, almost supernatural sensitivity narcissists seem to have to your emotions. It feels otherworldly, even demonic at times, as if they can sense the moment your heart begins to drift away. But behind that strange intuition lies something far more human and far more tragic. A psychological mechanism born out of deep, unhealed pain. Psychologists explain that this sensitivity isn't empathy. It's surveillance. Many narcissists grow up in environments where love is conditional, where affection is earned through performance, and where emotional safety is uncertain. As children, they learn to scan faces, tones, and silences like radar, reading every micro-expression to stay in control, to avoid rejection, to survive. What feels to you like a psychic power is, in truth, a trauma adaptation sharpened into a weapon. When you start to emotionally withdraw, when your smile feels rehearsed or your voice loses warmth, they notice instantly. That subtle emotional shift is like a blaring siren in their nervous system. Psychologists say this moment triggers what's called narcissistic injury, the panic that arises when their fragile self-image is threatened. To the narcissist, your detachment isn't just distance. It's annihilation. Their ego depends on your emotional response, so when it fades, they scramble to pull you back. They might charm, guilt, provoke, or seduce. Anything to make you react. Because in their mind, if you still react, they still exist. And yet, many people caught in these relationships describe something almost supernatural. How did they know where I went today? How did they know who I talked to? Feels creepy, even telepathic. But psychologists remind us, this is not mysticism, it's mastery of manipulation. Narcissists gather emotional data with surgical precision. They watch patterns, words, pauses, posts, all to maintain psychological control. Every detail becomes part of their mental map of you. They may not understand your heart, but they know how to play it like an instrument. Beneath this mastery, however, lies a deep fear of intimacy. True closeness requires vulnerability, and vulnerability exposes their emptiness, something they cannot tolerate. So, they build what psychologists call a false self, a carefully crafted persona that mirrors others' emotions without ever truly feeling them. They mimic empathy, echo your desires, and mirror your values, but only to keep you attached. Their affection is a performance. Their understanding is a strategy. And when you start to see through it, their mask tightens. They morph again, becoming whatever they need to be to stay in control. Even after a breakup, their presence lingers. Victims often describe it as being haunted online. The narcissist still watching, still liking old photos, still sending those innocent messages. Therapists refer to this as hoovering, named after the vacuum cleaner, a deliberate attempt to suck you back into the dynamic. They analyze every social media post, every caption, every silence. They can tell when you're happy, when you're pretending, and when you're lonely. And when they sense that emotional residue, that lingering tie, they strike. A text, a call, a hey, just thinking of you. It's never about closure. It's about control. Those who've lived through this know the cruel twist that follows. Once you're pulled back in, they punish you for ever leaving. Psychologists describe this as a reassertion of dominance. How dare you move on without me? It's a dark cycle, one that feeds their ego while draining yours. The more they sense you're moving forward, the harder they fight to pull you back, only to remind you who's in charge. But there comes a moment, quiet, raw, sacred, when something inside you breaks differently. Not in despair, but in release. Psychologists call it emotional exhaustion or sometimes trauma fatigue. Your nervous system, after enduring endless highs and lows, finally goes still. You stop reacting. You stop explaining. You stop caring. This is the turning point, the day indifference replaces pain. And that indifference, that's freedom. Therapists often describe this phase using the gray rock technique, becoming unresponsive, emotionally neutral, detached. Not out of bitterness, but as a boundary. When you no longer feed their need for attention, you become invisible to their control. The narcissist can't manipulate what no longer reacts. For the first time, their emotional radar fails. They lose access to the energy they once fed on. Recovery, however, is not about vengeance, it's about reclamation. Healing begins when you stop asking, "Why are they like this?" and start asking, "Why did I stay?" That shift marks the beginning of self-awareness. Psychologists emphasize that survivors of narcissistic abuse must rebuild trust in their own perceptions. The narcissist's manipulation rewires your sense of self, but therapy and time can help you reclaim it. You learn that empathy wasn't your weakness. It was your gift. They twisted it, but it's still yours. And when that day comes, when you can say, "I'm done," not with rage, but with peace, everything changes. The silence inside you becomes your strength. The narcissist can no longer read you because you are no longer broadcasting pain. What they once mistook for love was never love at all, it was energy. And now that energy is yours again. When you finally reach that point, that quiet, unshakable moment where you can say, "I don't care anymore," and actually mean it, something shifts not only within you, but also in the narcissist's perception of you. Psychologists often describe this phase as emotional liberation. The moment your nervous system stops dancing to their rhythm. It's not indifference born from coldness. It's peace forged through pain. And yes, the narcissist feels it. They sense it in the silence, in the absence of your emotional energy, in the stillness that once used to be filled with your reactions. For them, that silence is deafening. You see, narcissists depend on emotional feedback like oxygen. Whether it's praise, anger, tears, or confusion, it doesn't matter. As long as you're feeling something because of them. That's what psychologists call narcissistic supply, the emotional fuel that feeds their fragile self-image. When you detach, when the fuel line is cut off, they suffocate in the emptiness they've spent their whole life avoiding. But they won't show it. Outwardly, they'll pretend not to care. They'll act detached, posturing like you were just another chapter in their endless book of admirers. Yet internally, there's chaos, a collapse of the illusion that they are still in control. To the narcissist, your silence is a mirror, one that reflects the truth they cannot face. They are not the center of your world anymore. And that realization hits harder than rejection itself. Psychologists say this triggers a narcissistic injury, a deep psychic wound to their inflated ego. It's why you suddenly notice them retreating, vanishing from your feed, your inbox, your life. They're not doing it out of strength. They're retreating out of fear. Because engaging with you now means confronting a version of you they can no longer manipulate. They sense your emotional immunity, and it terrifies them. But there's a subtle danger here, the moment of pretending you're fine when you're not. Many survivors of narcissistic relationships make the mistake of putting on a show of confidence too soon, posting bright smiles and self-affirming captions while still secretly aching inside. Psychologists warn that narcissists can smell emotional inconsistency from miles away. They read those smiles like code. They can tell when your energy doesn't match your words. And that's when they strike again, gently, persuasively, reeling you back with phrases like, "I knew you still cared. I could feel it. It's not love. It's reconnaissance." They're testing whether they still have emotional access to you. That's why experts often advise staying low after cutting ties, not as a sign of fear, but of strategic healing. Emotional visibility too early can reopen the wounds they once exploited. The truth is, a narcissist can only manipulate what they can read. When you heal in private, when you guard your peace, your progress, your softness, you become unreadable. And in that unreadability lies power. For those who've walked this path, you'll know that the journey isn't just psychological. It's deeply spiritual. When the narcissist can no longer define your worth, you're forced to find it elsewhere, and many find it in the sacred. Reconnecting with faith, whether through prayer, meditation, or scripture, isn't just about religion. It's about restoring a moral and emotional compass that narcissistic abuse tends to dismantle. Psychologists often note that survivors who engage in spiritual reflection develop stronger discernment, a refined ability to sense genuine energy versus manipulative charm. It's not superstition. It's healing through meaning. Because here's the truth. Narcissists can feel when you've aligned with something greater than them. They sense the moment your validation no longer comes from their approval, but from something deeper, higher, untouchable. And that realization devastates them. They know they can't compete with peace, so they retreat quietly, completely. You might never hear from them again. But don't mistake their silence for indifference. It's surrender. They know they've lost the power to shape your world. This is where your true work begins. Healing from narcissistic abuse isn't just about detaching from the abuser, it's about rewriting your internal narrative. Psychologists emphasize that survivors must learn to regulate their nervous system again, to rebuild trust in their intuition. For so long, you've been trained to second-guess your perceptions, to walk on eggshells, to prioritize someone else's emotions over your own. Recovery means reclaiming that internal authority. It means letting your emotions belong to you again. And as you grow, the narcissist fades from relevance. They become a distant echo, a test you once survived, not a story that still defines you. You'll notice their absence not as a void, but as space where new energy, new peace, new love can finally take root. And while the narcissist feels the weight of that loss, you feel something entirely different. Lightness. So, when you reach that point, that true indifference born not from bitterness but from clarity, know that you've achieved what psychologists call emotional closure. You've completed the cycle they tried to trap you in. You've stopped orbiting their gravity and built a world of your own. They may never understand how you got there, but that's not your concern anymore. What matters is that you did. You did the work. You chose yourself. And in doing so, you broke a pattern that's older than the relationship itself. That's not just healing, that's liberation. As we draw this conversation to a gentle close, let these words drift outward rather than linger only in your own quiet. If anything I shared landed inside you like a small, steady light, pass it along to someone else who might be stumbling in the dark, because often the right sentence at the right moment is the hinge on which a life shifts. And if this channel has offered you a sliver of clarity or a balm for an aching place, supporting it is effortless. Press like, subscribe, and help widen this circle so others searching for direction can find the same foothold you discovered here. I am truly grateful you spent this time with me, and I will return with more reflections and tools to hold with you on this journey. But until then, be tender with your edges. Remain anchored in the small truths that keep you steady, and allow your healing to unfurl in its own deliberate rhythm, one patient, courageous step at a time.